Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Kernels of Truth, brought to you by Progress Kentucky. Thanks so much for joining us this week. I think we got an interesting show for you. You got a couple of perspectives we're going to bring you in the campaign corner and with an interview. So really important perspectives on what's going on in Frankfort. We're pretty laser focused on Frankfort today. I know the world, the political world, people who follow us probably are still like processing the State of the Union. And I'm just going to skip that because I don't want to go down that dark hole. And we're a Kentucky political show, and I don't think there were any Kentucky folks shouted out during the State of the Union. No one from Kentucky got a medal, I don't think. So what we're going to focus on is what's happening in Frankfort, and it is, about as bleak. We're at the halfway point of the legislature, I think just over the halfway point of the legislature and the long budget session, the 60-day session. So things are heating up. Things are getting quick, and we're going to be able to cover some, not all, of the things that you need to know about the legislature. So I do want to just recognize that they're so busy over there that we can't cover all the potential bills that are moving forward. But we had a couple of great guests to help us key in on a couple of important issues for sure. So that's what we're doing. Appreciate you finding us on the interwebs. I know there's a lot going on here on the internet. You somehow found it to us. You followed the curves and the twists and the algorithms and the scrolling, and you found us. So that's pretty amazing. And I appreciate that. So before we jump into the news, the date has been set for the next No Kings. So Progress Kentucky, we are an Indivisible organization, and we are thrilled to be honored to be a part of the Lexington No Kings Coalition. We are working really hard to make it the biggest event ever. So March 28th on Saturday, and we got to make it big, because if we all did watch the State of the Union or just the clips, the bleak and miserable clips, we know there's a lot we need to do to fight this kind of authoritarian regime that we have in Washington, D.C. So really important that we get as many people in the streets as possible. And we're shooting to get 3.5% of our population engaged. That's the Erica Chenoweth 3.5% rule. If we get people organized in ongoing opposition, then we can topple this regime. So you can go to the No Kings map and find the Lexington event. Please do RSVP there. There's take you to a mobilized event. There's also each and every day there's more Kentucky events popping up. So you can check with the link we're sharing. You can find the map. You can see what's closest to you. If there's not one that's too close to you, maybe you should start one, right? There's a lot of outrage out there, and we're working to turn that outrage into action through No Kings, and turning the No Kings action into something more durable, right? So for the next 8.5 months, we're focused on flipping Kentucky's 6th congressional district. Some key state house seats that are within that 16 county congressional district. We'll hear from one of the folks within that district later today. And we've got 4 great candidates running for the Democratic primary, but we are looking beyond the primary. We're working to shift the electorate of who will ultimately show up in November. Really big job, but we know if we look at the kind of history of this race in this district, we got to get more folks engaged if we're going to flip that district. So we're working really hard to do it. We're collaborating with Peaceful Bluegrass Resistance. We've been organizing our Flip the Six campaign volunteer events at the Lexington West 6 Barrel Room. They've been going really, really well. So we're going to be there the first Monday of the month. That's Monday, March 2nd, next Monday. Really thrilled. We're going to be joined by Sherilyn Stevenson. So we're kind of having all the candidates share their perspective one at a time. So that's my tricky way of getting you to come back to each and every volunteer night, because ultimately by the end of the thing, you'll have heard from all 4 candidates. So I hope you can join us. That's going to kick off at 6:00, and we're doing a ton of postcards. So we're also doing it down in Richmond, which is really exciting. So for Madison County, which is another big, huge chunk of important votes for this district, we're going to be doing that postcarding at Richmond's library on Saturday, March 7th. From 1 to 3 p.m. That's also on Mobilize. We'll throw a link into the show notes. But if your handwriting is just too illegible to be helpful for our postcarding effort, please make a monthly contribution right now via a secure online website, Act Blue, to help turn Kentucky's 6th purple. Stamps add up quick. 61 cents a postcard stamp. So if we're trying to get out 10,000 postcards or 15,000 postcards, you do the math. It's a lot of money. So if you could buy us a roll of stamps, $61 is a roll of stamps. We'd love to have that support, but whatever you can do helps out for sure. So now let's check in with our co-host. Let us know who you are, where you are, and who's on your biting list. So, all kudos to the great musical bard of Eastern Kentucky, our man Tyler. So I think we'll check in with Kimberly first. Kimberly, you there? How you doing?
How are you doing? I'm doing great. I'm doing wonderful because I got something for my biting list. But before that, I'm right here in Jefferson County in Louisville, Kentucky, coming to you live tonight. Two things real quick. Number one, on my biting list is people that don't vote, because all the stuff that we're going through, all the fear, all of the confusion and chaos can be contributed a lot to people that don't vote. That's number one. That's my PSA for the night. And then, my real biting list on this also is Andy Barr. Why? Because Andy Barr has come out with an ad, a 30-second television commercial, where he's talking about getting rid of DEI. It's just as racist, and it's a mess. It is definitely a mess. It's considered a racist ad, and then it just goes to show about these candidates, the top ones for right now on the Republican side, Daniel Cameron being the most religious campaign in history. And then they say that Andy Barr did this ad to kind of counterattack Nate Morris, who's known as the Trumpiest candidate. And now this commercial is going to define Andy Barr's total campaign as a racist. So he's doing it on behalf of Donald Trump. And I don't know how this is going to go down, but we are in Kentucky. Who knows?
Who indeed knows? So yeah, that we don't call him Andy Barr. Remember that, Kim? Because we don't want him to get any positive Andy associations, right? So he is Garland Hale Barr the Fourth, or Bootlicker Barr for brevity, right? So we don't want, because as you just pointed out, there's a huge chunk of our fellow Commonwealth citizens who do not vote. And they're not watching this show, right? They are like fully, completely checked out. They want to be as checked out as humanly possible from our political system. They might have tuned in for like 3 seconds of the State of the Union and got like so repulsed by it all. Like, what in the world? Why would I care about either of these parties, right? So they're like, oh yeah, I know a politician I like. His name's Andy. I bet that's this guy. I'll vote for him, right? So that, like, don't laugh. This is like literally, these people are out there. And so I wish everyone was, I don't wish everyone was as.
That's our responsibility, though. That's our responsibility.
There's only so much I can do.
Everybody.
There's only so much I can do. I'm just not picking an Andy fight. I'm going to make sure everyone knows Bootlicker Barr, Garland Hale Barr the Fourth. He is not the same guy. Let's call him by his given name. And I think that will help us in the general election, because who in the hell wants to vote for Garland Hale Barr the Fourth, right? And as much as I dislike his ad, it's a gross ad. It's a racist ad. Being white isn't a sin. Like, who said it was, asshole? What I will say is that he is probably going to win the primary. It seems like the money's behind him, and I know that Nate's got Elon's $10 million or whatever, and Cameron seems to not be doing very well in the fundraising, and that's really what it's all about. So I think we're going to be stuck with Bootlicker Barr for that general race, and we'll see who it's against. But what I do know is that I do not want him getting any positive ANDY associations for his chosen name. And also, What's that? Bootlicker bar, right? It rolls off the tongue.
Bootlicker bar.
Oh, Nate.
But my granddaddy's name is Garland.
It's a nice. I don't dislike Garland. I really don't. But I don't like that guy. Yeah, and I will say this: that super racist, horrible ad really just looking to like pick a cultural war fight, which awesome. What church do you go to every Sunday? Bootlicker bar. What I will say is that's gotten the attention of some faith-based groups. So Faithful America, which is a nationwide group of progressive Christians, they're running a campaign around that ad, going after one of Bootlicker Bar's biggest corporate funders, which is, I think, State Farm, right? And they're saying, hey, State Farm, is this is who you want to spend your money on? Is this asshole, saying this horribly divisive, racist stuff? And so if you want to find that petition, especially if you're a State Farm, like if you get your insurance from them, you should absolutely sign it if you agree with this sentiment. And I think it's a smart campaign. But yeah, that's gotten a lot of attention, and I'm sure that's what he wanted. And to win a primary, get the attention from the horrible base that you want to turn out for you. It's gross. All right, so wait. So I'm Aaron. I'm coming to you right now from Chicago, Illinois. I am far away from home, but I am excited to talk to you about my Bite List member, which I'm going to put Speaker of the House David Osborne on that list. I read the news about the General Assembly, and it's just really kind of bleak and annoying. And it's like, oh, maybe a bad bill is going to get a little bit better. That seems to be the victories. I don't know. I'm excited to talk to our guests later because I think maybe they'll disabuse me of my cynicism about Frankfort's General Assembly. But I really do think David Osborne is kills all good things. That's what I think. And so he's the Speaker of the House. They got super duper majorities in the House and in the Senate, the GOP, and so they don't bring anything up unless it's going to pass with unanimity of their crew, which is just unfortunate. A lot of bad things move forward, and a lot of good things don't go anywhere. But again, hope to be disabused of this notion. I guess. But should we do some news? Want to do some news stories? Kimberly's like, whatever. We have two stories we're going to do in one story. So this has been a big week for vouchers. And I'll be honest, I wish that we had my friend Nima with us for this News of the Week segment because, United 120 works really hard on vouchers. What I do know is that it's been active. The state Supreme Court weighed in, saying, time and again, we found it unconstitutional. Every time you try to do vouchers, these bills are unconstitutional because the state Constitution has some very plain language about funding of common schools, right? So public dollars can only be funded for common schools. But it's always an issue because the GOP is bound and determined to bring voucher programs to our state. So they've now found a new workaround. Nate, if you want to bring that image back up, this is the newest bill. It's an opting into a federal plan for private school tuition aid. And it's one that I think is, it's kind of that camel's nose under the tent is how I would characterize it. Maybe that's not accurate, but Nima's not here to correct me. So this is HB1, and if it's flown through the House already. Like I said, David Osborne, one of the co-sponsors of that bill. And it came just hours after all 7 justices of the Kentucky Supreme Court struck down their 2022 charter school law. So then they got HB1 and moved it right through because, again, they're like a broken record on these things. They really want to get them moving forward. But, again, it's a federal program that we are choosing to opt in through this bill. So, but I think it functions pretty much the same way as the state model, right? So it allows the state to identify these scholarship granting organizations or SGOs, which then would allow people who make donations to these scholarship granting organizations to then claim a tax credit for that money that then goes on to a pupil, which if you do the math, that means we're losing our tax dollars in order to fund that, right? Because they'll get a full tax credit for 100% of the money, that's $1,700 per year that they donate to these SGOs, and then that money is no longer available for the other uses, right? Those tax dollars. So I think at the state level, it was very clear, like, oh, you're losing these tax dollars at the state level, and that means that we are going to be, losing money for our state education funding. I think because it's federal, it makes it a little bit more challenging for people to kind of follow the money, is my understanding. But, I think they're also saying, well, look, this federal program exists already. We're just allowing our residents to take advantage of it. It's all coming from this federal pool. It's not state level pool. So it's a little easier for us to fuzz up where that money is coming from, right? But we know the Department of Education under the Trump administration, is not looking. It's looking to cut funding to state level, high school programs, public school programs under Linda McMahon's quote unquote leadership, right? So, I do think you do the math on this one, and it's not great for public education, and I think that's why a lot of people have opted to oppose this voucher bill, this new version of a voucher bill. But yeah, that's like my take on it. But again, I'm not a voucher bill expert. I am somebody who's a little bit concerned about funding for public education. So we can ask, maybe we'll ask one of our guests later about that one too. But Kim, will you follow on this issue at all?
Yes, somewhat. But as a mother that has a daughter that graduated from a private school, I do know the cost of it. And I know that everyone can't afford that. However, we need to take money to build our public schools to be a lot stronger and set these students up for success, rather than give money to private schools. Private schools have alumni. Right here in Louisville, Trinity High School built a $20 million football field that was totally funded by alumni. Same thing with my daughter's school, Sacred Heart Academy. You have enough people with money that pour money into these schools. So I just don't agree with us using federal or state funding for private schools at all.
Yeah. Ding, ding, ding. I'm with you on that one. All right. So you've got a story. Let's get to your story, because we do have a couple of guests we need to talk to, which I'm very excited to hear from.
Yes, this caught me by surprise, and there's so many holes in this particular bill that it is amazing. The bill passed last week in the House in Frankfort, as far as the bill would now be collecting DNA samples during the booking process from anyone arrested for a felony in Kentucky. This State Representative Patrick Flannery from Olive Hill, who is a Republican, told everyone that this House Bill 414 would allow this Commonwealth to follow the lead of 31 other sister states, and that it would help the federal government as well and the state to help solve crimes, prevent crimes, and free the innocent. However, all of that sounds wonderful and it sounds great, except for you could be arrested, on, you may not be the culprit and get arrested. So they're going to take your DNA. The only way that they say that the DNA would be destroyed is through your felony went down to a misdemeanor, or your case was thrown out. Okay, so then at that point, they would go ahead and destroy it. But here goes the other part of this, Aaron. I don't believe it's going to be that smooth. We've already got lawsuits against 21andMe and Ancestry.com. We found out about how Ancestry.com was making sure that a lot of Black Americans that spent their money, did the test, that they showed that they had no native Indian blood in their systems, which was highly, highly unusual. People started saying, wait a minute, my great grandmother told me that we have Indian. So then it was this big thing that just blew up with Ancestry.com. And then also the fear of using DNA. how can we respect the government to keep that DNA within itself when we have situations like Henrietta Lacks? We're still using her cells today. So honestly, I don't think this is a good idea. But the other part of it is catching people, uh, most wanted, all of these type of things probably helps a lot with cold cases. I'm all for it. But before it goes into effect, we need to come up with a plan to make sure that these DNA samples are not just being used in other facilities for testing and all kinds of other things. Just let your mind just go and it can go there. So what do you think about that, Aaron?
Yeah, I think the idea that they're required to collect these DNA samples makes me a little bit nervous, for sure. I'm a fan of the police shows, and I know the DNA always helps make a more compelling police show. But I also feel like I don't want to, I don't want to go too far down that path. So yeah, this is an interesting one. I'd love to hear a little bit more about who's behind it.
Can I say this really quickly, and then we get to our guests, because I am excited for both of them. But the other thing, another person that I know that has done time in our prison system had stated to me, what if the police, you know how LMPD is? I think all across the nation, people know about LMPD. But in addition to that, what if, there was some crooked stuff going on and we're trying to catch somebody and they can put DNA on somebody?
Mm-hmm. Like they're going to adjust your DNA to make you look guilty?
No, like take your DNA and put it over here to me. Then it makes it look like you did the crime.
All right. Yeah. One more reason. I don't know much about this bill. I'm not of a mind that this needs to be moving forward. So
I'll stay abreast of it for you.
Okay, thank you. Keep me up to date. A lot of foolish things happen in Frankfort, and we shall see if that one moves forward. All right, so now we're moving on. We got our campaign corner. Really excited to be joined by Margie Charasika, who's with the League of Women Voters. Margie is their Restoration of Voting Rights Chair. Thank you so much for joining us, Margie. I also want to just a little bit of a mea culpa. So we covered last week, if you watched last week, listen last week, we covered SB 80. And we were fairly positive about it because, the idea of restoring voting rights seems great. But I think there's maybe some concerns about SB 80. So, seeing what was happening, I want to just bring on somebody, with the groups who've been really working hard to make sure voting rights restoration is happening, because we all agree that's really important. But I think how you go about doing it is important as well. So Margie's going to come on and kind of come correct on what's happening with voting rights. So how are you doing this week, Margie?
Thank you, Aaron. It is my pleasure to be here on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Kentucky. How are we doing this week? Well, we're monitoring this bill that's come before us. Is Senate Bill 80, which recently passed the Senate and is currently in the House. We expect a hearing on that very shortly, probably as early as next week. But at this present time, we're concerned about the Senate Bill 80 as it in its current form. And so if it's okay, I'd like to start first with our position statement related to the restoration of voting rights. I think it would make it clear on what our concerns are. The League of Women Voters of the United States believes that voting is a fundamental citizen right that should be guaranteed. That's a statement right there that sort of lays that foundation. The League holds that the elimination or suspension of the right to vote should occur only when a person is convicted in a court of competent jurisdiction for the offense of treason, election fraud, or bribery in an election. That it be that incarcerated under the judgment of a court for a felony offense, and only during the end term, only during the said term of the incarceration. Also, we believe that it is, or that the person is mentally incompetent as determined by a court of competent jurisdiction. So those are the three areas that we feel very strongly about. Any person not falling within the parameters of these conditions should not have the freedom to vote taken away, is our belief. Senate Bill 80, we are excited about the fact that we have a bill moving forward, but we do have some concerns, and our concerns are basically in its current form. We desire, what would make us, I think, really excited about this bill is that we would like to see it amended to make it a clean bill or a clear bill that will restore rights immediately on release of on the end of sentencing or the release from incarceration, and eliminate any exceptions based on convictions. The league has been working on, the restoration of voting rights for over 20 years. So it is indeed an area that we are very concerned and passionate about. The fact that this bill passed in the Senate with 35 votes to 3 no votes, that's encouraging. But we cannot support this bill as it currently is written. For the reasons that I've already pointed out, the difference in our statement, the current bill is not in alignment with their statement because, for instance, provisions in the bill include, it makes it difficult for those seeking to restore their right to vote, and also for county clerks to tell who is eligible. County clerks often, they take whether someone can vote at face value. So, they don't go back and try to determine whether one person deserves the right to vote or is eligible versus another person. If they were to ask the person, do you want to register to vote? They don't go any deeper than that. And the person, if they've been asked that question, might immediately assume, yes, I can vote for it. Yeah, I'd like to vote. Unfortunately, though, if it is someone who has been convicted of a felony, and they attempt to vote and they have not had their votes restored, they could actually also end up with an additional felony because they voted or registered to vote when they were not able to do so or should not have been able to do so. So again, the county clerks, they have a pretty vital responsibility, but again, many of them are not prepared to carry out that responsibility in a way that would be, that would work for everyone who would fall into the category that might be possibly able to vote. Also, the way the current language is pretty ambiguous, or sort of, it's a little confusing because when you talk about violent crimes, it doesn't explain in detail what you mean by violent crimes. So it makes it difficult for those seeking to restore their vote to know whether or not they are indeed eligible to vote. Also, it includes exceptions to who can regain their right to vote. And it could mean that over 155,000 people would remain disenfranchised. Even with the bill like we have, that there would still be that many people who weren't sure or are not eligible to vote. So these are individuals who are working and paying their taxes just like the majority of individuals. We work, we pay taxes, and we expect to have a voice in our government. But in this case, many are doing that. They're working, they're paying taxes, but they have no representation, as far as who governs and what the issues are that impact them.
So I guess not to break in too much, Margie, but I think this is really interesting. I think you made some really good points about the county clerks and how they need to navigate this very confusing landscape this bill could create. I guess I'm a bit of a show me how you're going to get it done, right? So I think your statement is great, and it sounds like I would support that. Being the actual law. How do we get what you guys want? to be the actual law? How are things looking in the House? Do you have people who are going to make amendments to that legislation as it moves forward? And then remind me, this goes to the voters, right? Like whatever happens with this legislation.
It would go, if it passes in the House, and I mean it gets passed by the General Assembly, then it would be on the ballot during the primary. And what would we desire? Simple. It's simple. We would desire a clean bill with no carve-outs or conviction exceptions. That would make it simple, and it would also eliminate some of the infrastructure problems or the procedural problems that you might encounter otherwise.
Yep.
Without that bill, without it being clear that once you finish your incarcerated period, or once you finish your sentencing, if without that, it becomes so many different directions that one could go, and whether or not they would necessarily, be eligible or not. But to say that anyone who finishes their sentencing is able to vote opens it up to everyone.
Yeah. And then my assumption, though, is that, Senator Herron doesn't disagree with you, right? My hunch is that to get a Republican co-sponsor, certain concessions had to be made. Do again, perfect v good, right? Like I want us to move forward for folks who should have their voting rights restored. I totally hear your critique about, the challenge of the legislation as written. But I do wonder, like, do you have a co-sponsor or somebody who's going to make that amendment lined up in the House when that bill comes forward so we can see an improved version?
Right. Well, we're seeking that as we speak. I mean, we're looking for legislators that are willing to amend the bill, removing these carve-outs. So we would encourage those in the audience to reach out to their legislators.
Or in the green room. We could even ask somebody who's maybe in the green room what he's got going on with this bill. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. SB 80 is something that should be fixed. We encourage folks to make phone calls, encourage folks to call their representative and ask them to help improve efforts to restore voting rights to folks who have been incarcerated here in Kentucky. Absolutely. That's wonderful. Margie, thank you so much. I know we have one more issue that we wanted to cover. So maybe we can do a little quickly because it just astounds me. You pointed out that you guys are tracking a bill. It is, I think, House Bill 112, and it is a bill to abolish slavery. Now, can you tell me why we need that? Because it feels to me like I thought that's a thing that we had already managed, but maybe not.
Right. Well, this bill proposes a constitutional amendment to remove slavery and involuntary servitude from the state constitution, and would read, slavery and involuntary servitude in this state is forbidden or are forbidden. It is still on the record right now, and so we believe that we strongly support this bill because our justice practices should always demonstrate commitment to justice. Removing the exception clause would clean up a misguiding demonstration of commitment to injustice. It also, slavery and involuntary servitude are not necessary to punish for a crime. We punish people all the time without enslaving them. And then third, of course, it says removing the clause does not dictate whether prisoners will work or not, or how much they will earn for their labor. Instead, it requires that convicted people be treated respectfully.
Hard to dispute that, the value of that. Kim, any questions or thoughts on either of the issues that Margie brought up with us?
No, not at this time, but I am very, very pleased with the commitment to make sure that everybody can vote. And then number two, yes, slavery doesn't need to be anywhere remotely close to anything in our government. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, cleaning up some historical remnants that, are there in our penal code or whatever, it just seems like, yeah, let's do that. Like who's arguing to keep that on the books? Yikes. Margie, thank you so much for being so responsive and joining us to help set the record straight and a few different important pieces of legislation that League of Women Voters is tracking. And, again, encourage everyone to know the number, the legislative comment line, 1-800-372-7181. Get your views shared with your representative. These are the nicest people, and they will make sure that they will tell you who represents you. You can give me your address. It's not a test. You don't have to know who your representative is or your state senator is. I know it can be a bit confusing, but yeah, they will let you know and figure out who to send your message to. But yes, definitely want to improve SB 80, but get that thing moving forward so that we can restore voting rights. Because again, it's a little outrageous. And Kentucky is one of 2 states that doesn't automatically give folks.
Iowa, Virginia, and and Kentucky makes the 3rd one. So
okay, gotcha.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. I always want to hear from the League of Women Voters. Thanks again, Margie. All right, so now moving in to our second guest of the evening. Maybe we can put him on the spot with a couple of these issues that just came up. Representative Adam Moore. We big fans of Representative Adam Moore. Flipped a very challenging district and has gone on to, I think, really be a leader in the House of Representatives. And is doing a lot of great work moving kind of common sense legislation forward. So Representative Moore, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. Great to be here with you, Dr. Cecil Jones and Aaron, even though you're up in Illinois, but that's okay.
I'm going to be back soon. Don't worry. It's not a permanent trip. It's just for a couple of nights. But yeah, so I'm really excited to talk to you because I know we're halfway at the mark of the session. Lots going on. I know you've always been really strategic and thoughtful about the legislation you're moving forward. But I did want to just what about SB 80? Do you hear the critique, the legislation that's moving forward and this moves through the Senate and should be moving to the House at some point, hopefully. And if you had any thoughts about maybe even, authoring some amendments to make it a little bit more straightforward and a little bit easier.
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of emails about that today, and I've already been working on making sure everyone who's been reaching out gets a reply about how I feel. For those who don't know, I was a member of Kentuckians for the Commonwealth before I ever started running for office. And one of their big things has been voting rights restoration. So when I first made my very first campaign website, that was on my platform already. So I'm a huge proponent of this. I think I would like to see it cleaner. I would like to see a cleaner version of this and more automated, where it's more smooth so that there are less hurdles for someone who has served their time. Because the data backs it up that once someone's able to reintegrate into society, the recidivism goes down. So you're less likely to break up families. People are more likely to be productive and healthy and communicative members of society. And part of that is giving them their basic civic rights of being able to vote. What we need to do is, I think, get people with an R next to their name to file those amendments. But I would say that those conversations are happening behind the scenes. And that's part of doing this job well. When you're a Democrat and a super minority, there are going to be things that you do that have a large impact. And people may not always know that it's going on. But those conversations are happening. And that's just the way the sausage is getting made. And that's how it's getting made on Senate Bill 80 right now.
Yep. Excellent. Well, I know you're, a champ on a lot of key issues, but also strategic, as I mentioned before, about how you move them forward. And, I hope any and all representatives understand that just the dynamic of this super duper majority. And, as much as I put the guy on my biting list, it's because it's annoying that he's got so much power, right? So you got to find folks that David Osborne listens to move this stuff forward. All right. So what have been your priorities for the session so far? And I'd love to just hear your thoughts about, the budget bill, because I know that's finally dropped. But then, we talked a little bit about the vouchers effort and kind of what's going on there. So get your thoughts on a couple of those kind of hot button issues.
Yeah, well, that's a lot, Aaron. So I'll try to piecemeal that as best I can. I filed day one legislation with the intent of being this sends a message and this speaks to purpose. So I filed 3 bills on day one. They're House Bills 31, 32, and 33. 31 is an affordable housing bill that tries to limit the amount of single family homes that large investment firms and corporations can buy up in Kentucky. House Bill 32, that's my affordable epinephrine bill that passed in the House last year. Bad news on that one. I mean, it was filed day one. I had that lined up to go to committee last week. The federal government has issued new guidance on any type of cost defrayal, basically anything that the states are able to let these mandates go through and the insurance companies take on those costs. They make sure they're provided properly. Well, that's all been paused now. And so now Kentucky could owe hundreds of millions of dollars back to the federal government for capping the price of insulin, for guaranteeing prenatal care, things like that help people like be alive and be healthy. So that has all been put on pause. So House Bill 32, don't anticipate seeing it move. It should be passing the law this year, but now it won't be, I don't think. And then House Bill 33, that's a Price Fairness Act. I actually just got a modified version of that back today, and I've sent it over to the committee chair where it's been assigned. But if you've ever heard of surveillance pricing, that idea that like when your phone battery is low, Uber will upcharge what you're going to spend because you have to accept that Uber ride. That when you're closer to Target, the prices will jump up on the app because they know you're there to go shopping. And so it gives you a higher price. And there's a lot of things, some of the online food services as well do that because they'll see what your buying patterns are and they can make inferences of your predicted behavior. So it's a way where we're being gouged online and you have no idea what the fair price is. You are just being upcharged, where it's not like you and I could go into a Walmart and we just vote with our dollars. You're being shown a different price than your neighbor is, and that's not right. And so that was House Bill 33. All of those things are about affordability, affordable housing, affordable healthcare, and then just affordable ability to buy goods and services. So those were my day one bills. They were priorities. 32 was going to move. 31, the committee chair is okay with as long as I'm whipping it amongst that committee. And then 33, again, I got the updated version that would be a committee sub to the chair of that committee today, and I'm looking forward to meeting with her. So those are my priority bills for this session. Behind the scenes, a lot of people know about my military service. I created the Veterans Caucus last year. And so a lot of my work behind the scenes is with that caucus. It is organizing. Speakers come in from veteran service organizations or from federal or state agencies that work with the military or with our veterans to make sure that we're moving like the right kind of legislation that needs to go forward that are going to make the most impact. That was recognized this year. I actually just got appointed last month as the ranking member on VMAP, the Veterans Military Affairs and Public Protection Committee. In Congress in DC, the minority party will often have a ranking member on a committee, and that's been a congressional thing and not a state of Kentucky thing. We were able to get 5 of our members appointed as ranking members in the state house, and I was one of those 5 members made a ranking member. So it's been exciting to kind of help push those veterans, military, and first responder legislation and initiatives behind the scenes and get those over the finish line.
That's awesome. Yeah, I always like really impressed with the diligence you bring to your work, the seriousness, and then just the ability to move things forward, even if it's a challenging landscape for members of the minority party. And that's awesome. Congratulations on being the ranking member of an important committee. And I threw another couple, and we'll get Kimberly in here in a second. But it seems like this past week we've seen a lot of motion with the budget finally kind of showing up. And what does that really mean for Kentuckians? I'd love to get your first take, kind of first impressions of the budget and the process, kind of how things are moving forward.
Well, I gave my first impressions on my Facebook page and in my weekly newsletter. So if you don't follow me on Facebook, follow, Adam Moore, Kentucky Deserves More. Go to my website and join the newsletter there because I do put all that stuff out there. But we have a budget that is intentionally trying to underspend the revenue we're bringing in. And I don't mean they're trying to make sure we don't go into debt. I mean, they're not spending $1 billion of our revenue just so they can cut costs down and add money to the Budget Reserve Trust Fund, the rainy day fund, so that they're more better off to have that next tax cut. So what we have is Medicaid is underfunded, SNAP is underfunded, retirement pension system is underfunded, public education, school buses underfunded, post-secondary education, $115 million cut from our colleges and universities. So these were money taken out of actual revenue, not just pie in the sky, everything is sunshine and rainbows, actual money that we are bringing in like legally, lawfully, that is within statute and the state constitution, that was in that first draft of a budget, not do a lot for. Now, the Appropriations and Revenue Committee, they were meeting after adjournment today. I'm not on that committee, but I've got some hints of what was in the committee sub that they put out there. I'm really happy that they listened to some of the things that like we made a lot of noise about. We both, the listeners of this show who've been calling, emailing, posting, but also the Kentucky House Democrats who filed 7 amendments to that bill. One thing that I heard of is that cap in the Kentucky Employees Health Plan, that cap has been removed to take care of them. One thing I'm really proud of, my amendment was House Floor Amendment 4 to that bill, and that was to make sure we fully paid for SNAP. Now, when in DC passed the big, beautiful bill, as they called it, they transferred more of those administrative costs onto the state government from the federal government. So we knew that change was going to be there. We knew we were going to pay for that. Well, they left that out in the first budget, which meant those funds were going to come from actually feeding people. Those SNAP funds would have come from people's mouths and dinner tables to have gone to pay the administration fees. Well, I filed that amendment, and that was fully funded in the committee sub that was announced today. So I feel really proud about that. That doesn't mean I'm voting for this budget bill yet, but it means that because people have really made their voices heard and the House Dems have like fought like heck on this, we're already making progress. And I think that's something that we all can kind of celebrate.
That's great. It's good to hear, some of that impact. Good to hear that some kind of calmer heads potentially, I imagine they didn't necessarily expect everything in that kind of first draft to move forward. But I think your point about them like holding money back just so they can, hit their triggers for the tax cut, which like they've been reducing the tax quite a bit. I think it's ridiculous to think as all these federal programs are losing funds because of the big ugly bill that we aren't going to do anything to kind of meet some of those needs when it's very clear that our state really does need those programs and need those safety nets. So I'm glad to hear you fighting for SNAP. I know that healthcare is also a real in a tight spot as well. But it's really important that we have smart strategic folks back there working on this stuff. So yeah, Kimberly, any questions you got for Representative Moore?
I just have one or two. First of all, thank you for your service. We really appreciate it. You have sponsored or been a co-sponsor of so many bills. I've just been looking at your record and those type of things, and you're very, very impressive. I do want to say that. But I did want to ask you, there was a bill that you sponsored. I'm trying to find it. I had it. The bill relating to reporting of medical debt. Can you tell me exactly what that was, what that means?
Yeah, so I was the lead sponsor of this. And so when you take out a loan to start a new business, you want to take out a second mortgage on the house, you are making a conscious decision to do that. And you enter into a contract, you enter into an agreement. If you don't pay that back, kind of like collectors could come after you. And we understand that. We know what that means. When you end up in a medical emergency and you end up in an emergency room and you in a hospital because you are going to die or lose your life or lose your eyesight, lose a limb, like you've got to pay that bill so that you can be alive for yourself and for your family and for your community. So when you take on that medical debt, oftentimes it's because you are in a life-saving situation. And so what we want to make sure is that that medical debt is not reported and it impacts your credit score and your credit history, because that is debt that you take on, not because you're choosing to as an investment that you're like, I understand what the interest rates are. This is an ambulance. I've woken up in a hospital because an ambulance brought me here and someone's trying to save my life right now. And we know that, a routine stay in a hospital is already thousands of dollars, and a serious medical event could be tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. We want people to be able to get the medical attention that they need and never be able to take out a loan afterwards, never be able to buy a house, never be able to go to college, never be able to start a business. And those things are at risk if we allow that medical debt to be reported and negatively impact their credit history, when all they did is they show up at a hospital so that their life could be saved. And that's what that's for, Dr. Cecil Jones. Hopefully that makes some sense.
Yes, that makes absolute sense. And that right there can really make a difference between a family making it or a family not making it. And the other one I wanted to ask you about very quickly that I just wanted some information about. Now, the other one was House Bill 231. Am I correct?
I think I just saw that flash up on screen. Yes.
Okay. I want to ask you about House Bill 484, which you were the primary sponsor as well. And that's relating to domestic relations. What exactly was that bill? And what
So-
made you want to sponsor that?
Thank you. So this was actually not my idea. And something that your viewers should know is that I know that we like to promote ourselves and we pay to have TV ads and say, look how great we are. And we have all the best ideas. The best ideas come from the people, and it's our job to make those happen. So I had a couple of different constituents who have had issues in family court where they have had essentially totally erroneous kind of complaints made against them. So then their child was taken away from them during a hearing. And then when it was turned out that those accusations, either based on unsubstantiated claims of either abuse or neglect, were found to be unfounded after the investigation took place, well, it just went back to the status quo. That parent never kind of got recompense. They never got extra time with the child from the time that was lost with their child. So this is called the Time Taken, Time Back Act. And so if you have a child that's taken away from you by an erroneous allegation like that, that's proved to be false and have no evidence there, then that means the judge is they're not mandated to. We still want to have judicial jurisprudence, but we encourage that judge to make sure that that time is given back to that offended party so they have more time with that child that was taken away unfairly from them. So again, this was a great idea to have fairness for parents. And it was not my idea. It came from a constituent of mine. And so that's part of my job, is to file bills that align with my values, but they're often your ideas.
That's awesome. That's some serious constituent services. I love that. So we have one other issue I wanted to hit you with before we let you go. And this is about independent voters, right? So Kentucky is one of the states that, have closed primaries. And right now, I think about one in every 10 voters in Kentucky are like not Democrats or Republicans. They're independents or some other, kind of, I don't really actually know what your options are, because I've always been a Democrat. I don't know. But there are other things you can be. But you don't get to vote in the primaries, right? And as more and more people are kind of like opting out of the party system. Like, actually, the growing base of population really is like more and more people are registering as independents because they're just like kind of, put off by the partisan system that we've got in our political process, which is understandable. But, so what happens to those folks? They only get to vote once, they don't get to have a choice. And so many of our races, it's the primary that determines who's actually going to go on because of gerrymandering, who's going to actually be the representative, right? So you've weighed in here. You've got some thoughts on it. I'd love to hear kind of where you're headed with this.
Right. So I've drafted legislation, and I've talked to 4 different county clerks about it. I've talked to the head of the county clerks about it, who represents people around the state. I've talked to the Secretary of State about it. I've talked to people on the State Board of Elections. I even I brought it up to the Speaker of the House when we had a one-on-one meeting when I grabbed him on a Friday morning. But this is a bill I've been trying to put a lot of thought into, and it hasn't been filed yet because I've been trying to find like the best solution possible that makes sense and meets a need that we have that could get across the finish line. I'm very pragmatic. I'm not someone who files a bill to make a statement and be like, rah, 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 do this issue when it will never go anywhere. So I'm always trying to find something that can clear the legislative hurdles and clear both chambers. And so the Secretary of State, he's for open primaries. And we have the Speaker of the House and the Senate President on the record of not wanting open primaries. But I feel like there is a need to give independents a voice. So let's talk about the State House of Representatives. That's what I'm in, so it's what I'm most familiar with. There are 100 state races. There are approximately 40 races that are already decided right now, Aaron and Dr. Cecil Jones, that there will be no election in the primary or in the general because there is one candidate who has filed. They are already the person. There are about 50 races where there is a Republican and a Democrat who's filed, or more than one of each, and there will be a November election. So in those 50 races, independents will get a chance to vote, and they will vote in November. There are 10 races, 10 exactly, that have multiple candidates, but they're all in the same party. There will be an election in May. There will be no election in November in those races, and independents will have no say in who represents them. So the bill I've been working on is what I call triggers inclusive primaries. When there are multiple candidates on the ballot of a partisan race, but all those candidates are the same party, it would then open those up to independents because the primary becomes the general election in those cases. So that gives the opportunity for our independents to have their voice heard. And that other party, they're already guaranteed the seat. The Republicans are already guaranteed that seat in a red district. The Democrats are already guaranteed that seat in the blue district. And now the independents just get to make their voice heard in picking that Republican, picking that Democrat, when we already know it's going to be a Republican, or it's already going to be a Democrat who holds that seat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then so you haven't filed this. This is like an idea at this point. What's the reception been?
Everyone says it's interesting. The people in the House who I've spoken with, they understand it, but people, and I'm only speaking to Republicans about it because it's all about finding someone in the majority to sign on to. And so there are some Republicans who understand the merit but aren't ready to sign on yet. But I had a great conversation with the chair of the elections committee today. I've spoken to him about it twice, and he said he's happy to hear it in the interim, knowing that it's not going anywhere this year. And so it's my job to get it filed this year so people can see it, and then have that public hearing in the interim to allow both Democrats and Republicans to make their voices heard and see who we get some buy-in from to maybe help me carry this flag, this torch in 2027 and move the ball forward.
Yeah, great. Well, interesting. I feel like the answer to what's wrong with our, partisan process is, probably more democracy, right? So I think getting people a chance to vote is, I think, always a great idea. That's been a theme of this show from our talks about SB 80 to now talking about independent voters. We're kind of shut out of these important elections. So anything else you want to share with our audience while we've got you?
Thanks. I know we're almost out of time. I want the people to know that House Bill 1, the priority bill, which kind of opts us into a federal school choice program, was ran through and was an abomination of the House rules. They ran a committee substitute through a committee at 12 in the afternoon, and that thing was on the House floor at 2 o'clock the same afternoon, which meant that every amendment was out of order. We couldn't call any of our amendments for it. It meant that no member of the public had even seen the version of it at all. I mean, it was a complete miscarriage of the legislative process. They could have run that bill today instead, and we could have called any of the amendments, and the public could have seen the bill. They intentionally wanted to pass that without letting Democrats call our amendments that could have made it a better bill, and that's just frustrating. That's just them using their power to move something through so they don't have to, their votes don't have to be counted, because we have great amendments to that bill, but they don't want to let them run. That then puts their members at risk of voting no on our things that make it better. And that's really a shame, and I'm kind of fired up right now. But your listeners need to know that that stuff is happening. We had another bill that happened today where they had a floor amendment that wiped out the entire bill, rewrote the whole bill, and then they passed that first, which meant none of our amendments could be called on it. And these are the shenanigans that they're doing when they already have 80 seats. Like, we are not a threat to them, but they still don't even want to hear us talk. Like, that's how ridiculous it is in there sometimes.
Yeah, I think it sounds like a really frustrating when they cut the corners and when they break their own rules to move things forward, because it seems like ultimately they just don't want public pardon me, they don't really want public attention to what they're doing, right? And they just want to ram it through a process as quickly as possible. I don't know why, when vouchers have been so popular for the public, right? It's like, it does kind of all make sense, right? Because this is the thing where the Supreme Court's been very clear, where the voters have been very clear, and yet they still won't give up their vision of spending public dollars on private schools.
Yep. So thanks for letting me vent about that for a minute. And again, let me just echo, y'all, the listeners, y'all move the needle on House Bill 500 and the budget bills. Don't let your foot off the gas. Keep making your voices heard, because you're clearly getting things done right now. And that helps us. I mean, that helps us legislators, but that helps us Kentuckians. So please keep doing what you're doing.
Keep the pressure on. Know that phone number. Make those phone calls. It's a shifting landscape, as Representative Moore just detailed. They are willing to cut the corners to move things quickly. So you've got to be as responsive as you can. And everyone who makes that call, really do appreciate it, because as he just said, we're helping make a difference. So awesome. Really appreciate your time. Always love to hear what you have to say, and appreciate your work back there in Frankfort.
Thank you both so much for having me.
Absolutely. All right, Kimberly, it's been a jam-packed show. You want to close us out?
I sure will. And it was wonderful having Miss Charasika. Did I pronounce that correctly, Aaron?
I think that's right, Charasika.
Okay. With the League of Women Voters, and of course having State Representative Adam Moore on there. He's He's wonderful. That's all I can say. But it's been great. It was just you and me and Nate. It's been great tonight. Been really great. I appreciate you having me on the show, Aaron. And let me do the disclaimer. Progress Kentucky is a nonprofit organization registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State and organizes a 501c4. We are affiliated with the Indivisible Project and Commonground Kentucky Action, and we are also proud members of the Forward Kentucky Network. Progress Kentucky's goal is always to educate, organize, increase voter turnout, and advance a progressive agenda through civic engagement. We'll be back next week, and we'll be speaking with another amazing top-notch guest. And of course, we'll have our usual updates on the shenanigans of Kentucky political news with our own progressive views attached. So, production of episode 248 was by our own Nate Orshan. I like to call him affectionately Nate Dog, Roof Roof. And Nate Dog also wrote and performed our theme song. You can find more information and music at natosongs.com. That's NATO songs.com. If you miss our weekly live stream on Facebook or YouTube audio podcast, and our show notes are always available on Apple, Spotify, and just about wherever you get your podcast. And when you do listen, please, please, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you may be listening. And just really appreciate our listeners and viewers. You are the reason why we do this, and we're trying to turn Kentucky purple. So have a great rest of your week.